Hello Tunesters, it's Gav and welcome to another one of my videos. Let me scooch myself forward, here we go, that's a bit better. I always do that, be out the door in a minute. Right, on the last video, which was the French Foreign Legion in Mali, so up to date modern figures, a commentator asked could I give him some advice on figure manufacturers and paint. I gave him a very brief, obviously, answer. So I thought I'd do a video for anybody who's beginning or wants to be, who stumbles over one of our videos, says, "Oh, I wouldn't mind doing that myself for a hobby. Where do I start?" So this video is where do I start? I'm going to show you the basics toolkit, if you want to put it that way, from what you need to paint figures. Now the figures themselves, all I say is pick a scale. You can go, majority is 15, 18, 20 and 28 millimeter. Yeah, there's some, floating around in the 40 millimeter and there's some way down in the 2 millimeter. But let's say 28 millimeter, which is what mostly people get into if they're going to do it for a lot for display anyway. Obviously, wargaming itself covers every scale and what you want to do with it. So ask yourself, what do you want to do after saying that? Do you want to wargame with them? Do you want to paint them to the best of your ability and stick them in a cabinet or even in a box to open up? I've got stuff sometimes I just get out and put it on the kitchen table and just admire it. I can hear the horses' hooves, going, the drums beating, see the colours rippling in the wind. I've never grown up. You may think, well, Gav's a commission painter. I'd like to paint and sell. That is something that, unless you're in the absolute top grade, and really, it's not even the top grade of painting a lot of the time. A lot of it is luck, and you need to be featured in magazines, and not always, but featured in magazines, maybe winning a salute competition or something, where people really think he's a name or she's a name, I want her work. The rest of us are also rants. You won't make a living out of this. I've got serious mental health problems. I don't work. My head keeps collapsing on me, and I just add to my hard-working wife. I just add to our income with whatever I can paint for. So decide what you want to do with your figures while you're figure painting. A lot of people, like myself, paint because we like just painting the little soldiers. We like the different uniforms from different time periods. We're all like little butterflies, and the war gamers are as well, that do. Obviously they're war gamers, but they enjoy the uniforms and that, what they wouldn't be doing it. I love military history. That's what I'm into, and I love, obviously, military aircraft and things like that, but which I scale model as well now. But we're talking about figure painting. So what I've got on the table is a quick kit, really, of what you probably should be looking at using to get into figure painting. So just put in your search engine, I shouldn't need to tell anybody this at this modern period in our lives, put the scale of the figure, 28 millimeter, put, in the case of what I've got on the desk at the moment, Vietnam War, 28 millimeter Vietnam War figures, and they will come up, and there's your manufacturers. As I say, if I do mention any manufacturers in doing this video, I have no ties to them whatsoever. All my little tools that I use on the paints here that are well worn, I've bought all myself. So let's go down to the bench and take a look what you might need. Right guys, sorry for joining me at my very scruffy workbench. Sorry for joining me? No, that isn't. What I meant to say was sorry for my scruffy workbench. Right, these are the basic clean-up tools that you'll need. Forgive all this up the side. These are little concrete rocks that I'll be painting for Vietnam figures. Right, first of all, you need to wash your figures in detergent. So washing up liquid, warm water, not too hot, whether it's metal or plastic figures you're going for. Use your wife's toothbrush when she's at work. No, I'm kidding, this is an old one, but give them a scrub down with the toothbrush. What I should have actually said though, I said cleaning off figures, you actually need to clean them off even better first. So get yourself a scalpel blade. This is Swan Morton. It says surgical on the front. Please don't do any surgical procedures if you're not qualified. You can get these on eBay extremely cheaply, £3, £4, £5 for the handle and usually a blade in the top. You get these pointy ones, you get rounded ones as well. I buy a box of around 50 or 100, I can't remember, which I've had now for, and this is the blades, spare blades. I've had for 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer, and I'm only just starting to get into the last third of it now. Try and keep them as sharp as you can. Blunt knives don't work particularly well, whatever type you've got. You can get these round ones, X-Acto knives I think they're called, and other different types of crafts knives, but a lot of us use these Swan Mortons. They're very cheap, the blades are very cheap, and you just take the blade off when you want to change it. Obviously it's not very often. They do snap occasionally, as in the blades, if you're putting too much force on a metal figure that you shouldn't really be using a blade for, so just be careful with that. So Swan Morton, go on eBay, very cheap. You'll need some files. Now this is all to take the mould lines off figures. I've just actually got some delivery of some Empress Vietnam figures, and of course I haven't got them to hand, so I can't show you the mould lines, but it'll be self-explanatory. You'll see seam lines around the metal figures or the plastic figures. They need to be removed. We'll use that maybe on a different video. So anyway, what was I showing you? These are small modelling files. This is from Model Craft. I've had these again 5 or 6 years. They're getting a bit filled up now. These are diamond ones, slightly more expensive. You can get even cheaper ones, which are just the normal cast type of steel on them. But I prefer these diamond ones. They last a lot longer. I try and keep them clean, but after a while, even these start losing their, they get a bit compacted. But yeah, you get these from any model shops, hobby shops. But again, eBay's your friend there as well, because there's a lot of selling the cheaper ones. You may need to. Let's get the other file out of the way first. Again, you can get these at the Range for £1. Range is a UK, distributor that does hobby stuff and furniture and all that type of stuff. You know what it is in the UK, the Range, but this one's starting to get a bit chocker now. But I think you can get these for like £1. And these are just for the bases on the 28mm figures, or even the smaller figures. Some of the bases can be quite chunky and rough, and you need to make them smooth so that when you put them on a base, they sit flat. If it's plastic figures, you may need some of these skinny sticks. I use these mainly for my scale modelling, but I do occasionally use them on plastic figures as well. These are Flory ones. Phil Flory's got his own YouTube channel, scale models, and he's got a shop and all that type of stuff. But any type of skinny sanding sticks, or just plain sandpaper, is just as good. These came with a cheap car kit literally 20 odd years ago, and I use them for snipping off bits of metal whenever I need to snip off bits of metal. So again, just something cheap like that. Pin vise, 1 or 2, literally again £5, nothing expensive. They'll do your drilling, although I've got a few different sizes in there, and a lot more other boxes with different sizes in. 1mm drill bits, that's all you need. Again, eBay's your friend now. Get the carbide tip ones. I wouldn't suggest buying these ones that have tiny ones in up to like 15mm or something ridiculous, because they really are cheap and nasty, and half the time the smaller drill bits haven't even got any fluting in. They've come. A lot of it's made in China, but even some of the stuff is just rubbish. Go on the internet and buy these. Let me just get these up. I think these are carbide tip ones, or carbide drill bits. I can't remember if these are 50p or £1, but I usually have them about a batch of 10. Sometimes they'll bust off on you, sometimes they just don't hold very long, and sometimes they last for ages. It really is a, you know, suck it and see type of thing. But if you get yourself 5 or 10 of those, they'll see you in good stead. Also, your pin vise is what it says. It's like a literally mini vise as well. This works, by the way. Hold it in the palm of your hand, fingers, and then just twist your drill bit, and it'll drill into the whatever your plastic, metal, whatever. It'll obviously struggle more on metal than it would on plastic. But also, if you're doing, say, separate heads, if you put a pin in the head, which I did on these, not the Legionnaire figures I'm painting, but I've got a Ranger figure that's got 2 heads I'm painting for the client, and I've inserted a pin in that, and put your pin in there, and you can use it to paint with as well. So that's basically what you need for. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. So literally clean all the mould lines off, put them in some warm water, give them a scrub with your toothbrush, dry them out, and they're ready for priming. And that's the next bit we'll go on to. Right guys, we've got our figures on the all cleaned up and ready to prime and paint. Now you can stick your figure directly to a base first. These Vietnam, let me stretch over here. This Vietnam figure here, he's obviously being glued directly onto the milk bottle top. You can put them on an MDF base first, and then on your whatever you're going to hold them on. I find milk bottle tops work for me, different scales. So the milk bottle top for 28mm figures, or for an 18mm mounted figure that's obviously got a longer base. So that's our milk bottle top, and then these like water type, whatever they are, pop bottle tops, water bottle tops. I use these for smaller scale figures like 18mm. If I'm doing 10mm, I will super glue a piece of, super glue a lolly stick, nice lolly stick across the top, and put the 10mm figures in a row, and 6mm figures as well across the top of that, and paint them on that. But I'm quite happy holding these for painting. You can get purpose-built hand holders, of all descriptions from different companies, to stick them down on the bottle tops. I used to use these post-it, things that hold posters on walls, but over the years the suppliers seem to be changing the thickness of them, obviously going cheap, thickness of them and the stickability, and they're no good now for sticking 28mm figures. As soon as it gets a bit warm, or they've been on them for more than 24 hours, they start leaning, and then if they fall over, that's all your hard work is ended up chipped or whatever. So I only use these now rarely, and I tend to use them on the smaller, like the 18mm figures, if I'm going to use them. What I do use, and I've put it down, here we go, is PVA. This is I believe a 15-minute one. It did say. Yeah, but I think this is a 15-minute drying curing time one. A huge big bottle. I bought that January of last year, just before the plague kicked off, and I'm about a third of the way down it at the moment. It goes off in 15 minutes. What I tend to do is either stick them on at the beginning of the morning and obviously work on other figures, or usually before I wrap up at the end of the night, I will put my, so let's just put him here so we've got something to talk to. I will put my figures on there and let them dry off overnight, and then they'll be ready for priming. So choose whatever you want to hold them on. You can also, I've got these from that printing the other day, which I've primed. If you're going to pin the figures particularly, these cork bungs are also very good. Again, eBay's your friend there. They're like for wine, homemade wine and beer and stuff like that. I find them very good. I use these for painting display figures on, so larger scale figures. Or guys like this, anything that I've pinned really, they last for a very long time. They're tactile to hold, and you can get them in smaller size as well. This is one of the larger ones. But for my standard Wargame figures, it's milk bottle tops, pop bottle tops, anything. You want a bit of a diameter around it so that you're not catching the figure, especially if it's a horse. 28mm horses only just fit on these. I should really get some form of other way of doing it, because you can catch the tails sometimes if you're not careful. So we've actually got our figures mounted now. Then you'll need to prime them. I prime with an airbrush now, and I use a lacquer primer that's good for metal or plastic. I know 7 out of 10 people aren't going to have a wish to have an airbrush. I get that. So what I've used for hundreds and hundreds of years, and guys are still using now, and I have this can and probably a couple of others in reserve, is etch primer from Halfords. This is etch obviously for metal. It's the shiny one, grey. There's a plastic variant as well. Both are excellent. They really do stick well. The reason I've gone on to airbrush is, one, I've got an airbrush, and two, I find obviously this just puts a cloud out. When it sticks to something, it sticks really good. And it says smooth matte finish, and they're not wrong. It's a nice finish. It's just that you can't always get in all the nooks and crannies. But a lot of people use these. Of any other country, it's just a car etch primer, as I say, for car bodies or whatever. About a £10. Or you can use these. I'm stretching here. You can use these guys. This is surface primer from Vallejo. It's supposed to go through an airbrush. I've never been able to airbrush this particularly well. It's well known for gluing up airbrushes. But I do brush it. I've got a figure here actually that was spare. Didn't use in the end, but he was brushed over late one night because I thought I was going to need him, and I didn't in the end. But that's the Ghost Grey. I prefer primer colours. Some people use black. In fact, there's lots of colours on the market now, as we've already said. I prefer grey or white. If I am using this as a brush, it's like a plastic, there's like a coating in this, a latex coating or something. It's not very good, I believe, for scale modelling, which is what it was for originally. But it's okay for Wargames figures. I've used this, and if you see shiny bits of metal because your can of primer hasn't gone over it enough, I just touch it up with this. That's fine. And you can wash that out in water. Right, we'll now go on to, we've primed our figure, it's all ready to go. Let's see what paints and things like that we need. Right guys, we're now on to the painting side of things. I'm only going to show the paints that I normally paint with. There are a load of manufacturers out there. A lot of them seem to be in Spain for some reason. I have no idea why, but I think all the ones I actually use are Spanish. So let's go quickly through them. Vallejo. They are what I would call your go-to standard paint that a lot of us, if you're not using the Games Workshop Citadel stuff and you've crossed over into doing historicals from doing their 40k stuff, and you may have lots of their paint, which is perfectly applicable to historical painting. As I've told, well not told you, but said to you on so many of my videos, don't get dragged into whatever it says on the bottle. You know, it might say World War II Luftwaffe green. You can still paint Napoleonics with that, as long as it looks like the colour it's supposed to do on the Napoleonic figure. But yeah, don't think you have to keep buying a fresh bottle of paint. We all do. I mean, I've got probably more hundreds worth of paint than I have figures and kits, but yeah, Vallejo is a good place to start. The only thing I'm not as keen on is they're like reds and blues so much. There's some I like and others I don't. So I use, let's move the AK out of the way for a minute. I use Andrea. Yes, this is a red set, but I use Andrea a lot as well. Where are we? Here we go. Andrea colour. You can buy these from Hysterex agents, very good service. Again, I've got no claim to them. You know, I'm not doing it on their behalf. I use these for all my reds, and then I occasionally use bits like Amaranth Red from Vallejo, Whole Red, but this is my core red set. You can buy them in singles. If you go on Hysterex agents, you can on their site you'll see them as singles as well. These are around £20 to £24 a box, and obviously it soon mounts up. I also use their blue set, Starfighter wings, the finest post-war aircraft the world's ever seen. I'm just putting that out there. Yeah, I use their blue set. I think it's fantastic. I don't use, unless I'm doing Old Guard, I don't use the very darkish shadow colours as much, but I use their next shadow and all the rest a lot. I think it's a cracking colours, very, very smooth, and I like them a lot. They do greens and yellows and white sets as well. Probably not as many sets as some of the other manufacturers, but could be a good place to start, because they will number their colours in here. Let me just get them out for it, be easier. Right, there you go, numbered. It's numbered on the bottle if I haven't worn them off. Does that one still say it? Yeah, 3, a bit knackered now, but there you go. And you can literally paint by numbers. Obviously that's a display figure on the front, because they were mainly made for display figure painting, but you used to get some decent colours and decent results with these paints. Let's put those back. And now the one I've been using recently, I've bought about a dozen bottles of just different colours to try, is the AK 3rd generation. I really like these a lot. I even like the bottle opener top, even that's what I was after. But yeah, they'll come in different circle colours, telling you if it's a pastel colour, it'll have a particular colour. AFVs, obviously, because these are supposedly through the airbrush as well. I've not done that. I tend to spray mainly lacquers, but yeah, I think I rate these very highly. Probably not that any different from the Vallejo. You know, I'm not saying they're a step above Vallejo. I'm just saying they're not a disappointment. There's nothing worse, isn't it, than when you buy stuff and they fall below expectations, and these haven't. Whether they're all singing or dancers, as they say, new formula beats other acrylic paint types, well, I'll leave that up to you. I don't think it particularly beats the Vallejos that I've got. You will find all the manufacturers have your favourite colours, and you sometimes end up with 3 or 4 lots. So that's those. The only other one, and I've only got this out because I was only using it on the brown helmet covers of the legionary figures I've been doing. This is, where are we? Come on, scale 75. These are extremely matte paints. Now this is more for, I got it because I was painting 1 in 35 scale Waffen SS. But again, don't get tied into, as I say, I use these colours on so many things that have nothing to do with the camo patterns, or World War II for that matter. Don't get tied into what something says, because otherwise I'll have you buying box after box of paint. But scale 75, for me, is it a Wargamer's paint in the sense of, if you're a beginner, it might be take you slightly more to actually get it to work for you. The paints are very matte, but I don't know. I think sometimes for a beginner painter, they can be a bit more harder to work with, although they do a massive range. And the other caveat to that is, if you don't start with a particular paint, how do you ever know? So I'll leave that up to you. I occasionally use these on Wargame figures, but mainly I've got a big collection of them I use for my bust painting and larger scales. But I do use them on Wargames figures, so I wanted to show those. So that's the paint side of it. You've got to ask yourself, oh, by the way, if I've got to fill any gaps in plastic figures particularly, I use acrylic putty. This is Vallejo. You can get them from Tamiya and other places, but this is very good. You put it in, you can put water in, or IPA alcohol for that matter, and if you need to, and smooth it out. You can obviously wipe it off as well with IPA or water. So if you've got any gaps you need filling, that's quite good. Also, for gap filling, that I've started doing on aircraft fuselages and that, which is the super glue method, which I've actually done on some figures to see how it would work. You mix that, you put some on the top of in a milk bottle top, put some talcum powder in with it, and it makes it into a really tough filler. It goes off really quick, and then once it has gone off, I just pare it away with a scalpel blade, and that does a lot of good filling. But again, that's probably a bit for a beginner. You might not want to bother with that. Brushes are more contentious thing. Everybody has their own ideas. These really rough ones are army painter brushes. I've got a bit of a gammy hand, and holding the brush. I do like, although I use round brushes, the triangle ones I quite like. I've used these for about 10 or 12 years, and not these particular brushes. I know they look it. And I've had about 3 bad brushes, because obviously you don't get to pick them unless you actually have a place that's local to you. So you've got to rely on somebody, and you know that they're not picking them for the point. They just pick a brush out and put it in your box to post out to you. And I've had about 3 or 4 over 10 years that have been clubbed, so that the point, you always paint with a point. You don't need the rest, you need the point. The rest is just to carry the paint, extra paint. It's that point you need. These are well and truly, and I'll come up to this in a minute, these are not great now, but they weren't great when I bought them, which is going to be rather annoying. But I'll spend literally, because I paint professionally and I'm not hard on my brushes, but I will literally get through about 40, 50, 60 quid's worth of brushes a year. Yes, I do. Yeah, I've used these Army Painter Wargame brushes. They're synthetic. They've never been, as I say, apart from the very odd one, not a problem, until I bought this last batch, and I must have bought a double of each, and not one of them would hold a point. I don't know why, if they've changed the manufacturers or what. I wasn't happy. I'm not happy, and I've pushed myself along with these just because I'd be damned if I was going to throw them away. And it wasn't the fault of the seller. They don't know the bums from their elbows when it comes to brushes. They just chuck them in a box. It was whatever Army Painter had done, I've no idea. But every single brush, as soon as it hit liquid, it would not hold a point. And that was really disappointing after 10 or 12 years of using their brushes, because I could never fault these brushes until this last batch. So I have actually just bought two of their Psycho ones, because I use them for eyeballs, which is their really ultra tiny ones. Very hard to get, whether it's in the UK, whether it's Brexit, which probably is. You find them on eBay, and they keep putting the adverts up, and they've got like one type of brush, and it's usually the type of brush like the Psycho people don't often use, and all the others are out of stock. Good friends of the channel, Mr. and Mrs. Beetle, bought me these for Christmas. These are Kolinsky Sable brushes. I use these for my top end painting on busts and large scale figures, but I'm going to buy the smaller variants of this Series 33. They are. Can you see that? Series 33. They do versions a lot more smaller, and although people tell you over and over again it's only the very, very tip of a brush that you paint with, so you can use a large brush on a small scale figure. You can, but I also do a lot of 18mm and below figure painting, and I'm more comfortable with a very small brush. Just am. So I will be buying, I've just been on their website, and I will be buying 2 or 3 of the smaller scale brushes, because these have held their tip wonderfully, to replace these, because I'm not prepared at the moment to spend another 40 odd pounds to find that, you know, I might as well have driven over them with a car, which is a real shame, because these have been the best type of brushes I've ever used for Wargames painting. But that really was a bad batch. Right, so yeah, you can go down the road of, this is real sable, by the way. People are against that type of thing. They also do ranges of synthetics as well, but I would suggest, is it worth, no. I was going to say, to clean your jars out, get yourself 3, I use like the Bramley applesauce jars, something, a smallish jar. I have three jars. The right hand jar is for cleaning out brushes into obviously dirty water. I have a middle jar, so the second jar along, that's for cleaning the ones that just been cleaned, just to give them that extra bit of fresh water. Dry them out on a kitchen towel. If I'm changing colours, I will then, I've got a little sealed jar that I've decanted this into, and I will use this is like a biodegradable one, non-flammable, non-toxic, made from recycled ingredients. But this is very good. You've got to be careful with some of these brush cleaners. They can hook your brushes over because they can be quite powerful. So I use this when I change colours. So if I've painted brown and I'm going to white, I will have washed them out as I've just said, and then I will put them in this, obviously decanted into a smaller thing, and give them a sprinkle out in that, and then wipe them out again. You'd be surprised the paint that comes off. You don't want paint. You will do eventually, but you don't want it going up this metal ferrule. If you do, what will happen is over time it will push. Even if you've got a really nice point still on your brush, it will splay that brush out, because the paint down here will just splay the brush out. So that's why I keep them in the Brush Magic or Bristle Magic, just to take out as much of that paint as I can. The last jar that you want out of the 3, I use a separate jar always for metallic paints. I wash metallic paints out in a separate jar and then wash them out in that Brush Magic. So yeah, that's it. And then the only thing else you need on the painting side of it, which I'm not going to get out because one of my lights is on it, is the how you're going to mix your paints. You could buy one of those plastic circles with a little, watercolorist using that. You're wasting your time really with one of those. Start off with, especially if you're new, you haven't got any old tricks, start off with a wet palette. I've got an old ceramic dish. I fold out. I cut some kitchen towel to size. I fold it over, plonk it in. I've cut some baking parchment, some greaseproof paper type stuff. I've cut that to size. I put that on top. So I've put the paper. The kitchen towel goes into the dish. Put my water on. Into the dish so it soaks up, so that there's slight pools of water without it being drowned in. It's something you'll just have to learn yourself. Put my parchment on top, and then I actually use a piece of plastic card over the top of that when I'm not using it, and that will keep your paint fresh for a day or two if it's not in the fridge. You can put them in the fridge. But you can buy wet palettes from 10 to 30 quid, depending on the size you're doing. But just put how to make a wet palette. I have actually got one in my videos, but I do that many videos you'll never find it. But it's not in a playlist, I don't think. So just put how to make a wet palette, and loads of people have done them, and you'll see how to do that. If you're sticking figures together, by the way, I knew I'd be missing bits and pieces out. I always do. I just use this. I use my scale modelling, extra thin, but use whatever you want to use. But I use that type of glue. I don't tend to use super glue to actually glue figure arms and that together, only because it's not as secure as the welding action of hot glue. That's that. Oh, and you'll want to varnish afterwards. I use Galleria Winsor & Newton. I put this through an airbrush now. I don't brush paint it. If you do brush paint it, I think about 8 or 9 times out of 10 I've not had no problems. Occasionally I'd get a problem with it going shiny rather than white. You know, you get like a satin look. I put and that's down to me putting too much on with the brush. If it's pooling and going on like treacle, you've gotten way too much on. I put 2 coats on. I put a coat up. The problem is now, what I'm going to tell you, if you're doing it by brush, you'll probably have to brush the figure twice before you put it on if you're putting it on a mass base where you're putting a load of Napoleonics on a base. Because I'm putting it through the airbrush, what I do is I'll airbrush it through, and then I will stick the figures down because I can handle them because they've been put a coat of varnish on them. I'll stick them on the main base, flock the base over, do whatever I'm going to do with it, and then I put another coat of spray on varnish all over them again, and that also seals in the any work I've done on the base and the edges of the base and things like that. This is what I use though. Rather than the modelling varnishes, you can get this even in bigger tubs, but I tend to get them in these glass. I used to have one in reserve and the one I'm using. If I'm putting it through the airbrush, I actually use, you can put some drops of water in, I actually put lacquer, Mr. Colour lacquer varnish, Mr. Colour lacquer thinners, about 3 or 4 drops in, and I've had no problems with that at all. It goes nice and matte and that. But if you're gonna do it, you can with your brush, you can do them straight out the pot. So that's what I use. Again, you may have different, it might work for you, it may not. So I think that's it, guys, for a basic rundown. I'm bound to, the other 2 things you'll probably need, which is, you can see under there, cutting mat. Get yourself one of those. This was £8 I think from years ago, and it really needs replacing. It was about £8 from the Works of all things in the UK. But get yourself a cutting mat. They're if you haven't ever done it before, they self-seal, so you can run your scalpel blade along it and it'll seal itself back up again. Get one of these, they're not expensive. The other, I suppose, if you're going to be starting, is light. I'm a big believer in as much light on the subject as you can get. Let's just see. No, can we get my light into view? Nah. I use a daylight light. You'll see, guys, you'll see mine in the background a lot of the times. It was these are tube ones, and now they have gone over to LED ones with it in it, and they've even got like you can turn the brightness up and down on them. This is an older version. You can't do that. It's tubes. I've had to replace one tube, I believe. That was around £80 in a sale, but between 80 and I reckon anywhere between 80 120 quid. I know, people are taking a big gulp, but it's not just because I do it for a living. This is a hobby that you're going to be sat there and hopefully you're going to be enjoying, and it's going to be really frustrating if you're having to squint or it's casting shadows over your work. Really, I know people will say they do, and I did for a good few years when I was younger. You can paint with like tabletop lamps. You can paint, I've seen people on videos going, yeah, brilliant light, cost me 30 quid. I really would say to you, a lot of us use these bigger lights, and I really would recommend it. In fact, let me just see if I can move this up. We're going all over the place here. I'm trying to hold it up here whoa, come on, Gav. Sorry, guys. All I'm doing is trying to get you guys so you can see that. There you go. If you that's a manufacturer, if you can work that out. As I say, it's all, here we go, back to looking at nothing. It really would pay you if you have the money and you think you can stick it figure painting. Blooming heck. So I've got my big tripod here. If you think you can stick figure painting, so it's going to be an investment you can use, I would strongly recommend you get one of those type of lights. you know, you'll spend a fortune on boxes of soldiers. And I see people all the time, whether it's painting figures or scale models, you know, oh, this tool is really expensive, that tool's really expensive, but they'll spend a fortune on a pile of soldiers that they'll probably never even paint, a pile of models they'll probably never even make. They haven't got half the gear to actually do the job properly. You know, it's a big investment, that, but if you can get a really decent light, I would suggest that's your main outlay. Right, guys, sorry for the camera going all over the shop, but that's it. I hope that's been of some type of benefit to anybody. I can't make the video any shorter. I'd shot this once and it was 1 hour and 10 minutes the other day. So now we're down to about half an hour. So look after yourselves. I might well put a video up, you know, in a few weeks' time, saying a few extra little bits that might make your figure painting a bit smoother. You know, things like I've got a Dremel, obviously power drill. I've got this, that, and the other. You know, just more, I would say. Not all big ticket items. Some of them is just really cheap stuff, but it's just that as a beginner, you don't really need. They're just things you'll acquire along the road. And then we might look at some other, you know, more into other paints, and well, not so much other paints. I've shown you the ones I use for figures, but maybe if anybody's interested, we'll look at consistency of paints. What I would say, you know, this is how to apply this particular thickness of paint on your figures, and you know, all those little things. I might do 2 or 3 videos like that. But Ron, I hope this has been some benefit. Ron, will you wake up, please, Ron? Somebody give Ron a shake. He's gone to sleep. But yeah, if that's been a benefit, I'm hopefully done something right. Look after yourselves. Coming up on videos, we've got some. We'll have some. The Empress Vietnam figures will be based starting in the next few minutes, and we'll have a video of those, not only based and you know, final reveal, if you want to call it that. I've also got, as I say, 12 other figures. Some are probably replicated. I'm sure I've bought one of the two lots of M16 figures and some naval corpsmen, which are medics. So we've got that. I will be doing an unboxing of a 1 in 56 kit that I've bought as a tryout. We'll be looking at the French Foreign Legionaries. They should be painted and finished. Well, these 4 legionaries anyway will be painted and finished in the next 48 hours. And I've got 1 more legionary and an American Ranger to do. So we'll be having a look at those. I will be doing some 3D printing hopefully in the week of some non-fantasy figures. They're like I've been trying to download some Vietnam 1 in 56 type stuff. We'll see if they actually print, and there'll be something else as well if they come through in time. Some more figures. I've also got some more commission work coming through that I haven't started yet, but is actually coming through the door. And we'll be taking a look at those over the next couple of weeks as well. Starfighter, hopefully at last, 48 scale Starfighter. I'll have a video up towards the end of the week coming up. I've got more books on the Starfighter at the moment than I've actually got progress on it, but I do like the Starfighter. So yeah, we'll be getting some progress on that. Look after yourselves, take care, and we'll see each other very soon on another video.